Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to you all. My name is Julie Gishuru, and I'm the host of the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm a passionate Pan-African, an Afro-optimist, and it's extremely exciting to be here today. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it has become absolutely clear that the private sector lies at the heart of sustainable development for Africa, of transformation for Africa, of unleashing of opportunities across Africa. Over the years, we've dabbled with many forms of development, but we've come right back to sustainable development sitting firmly with the private sector. Ultimately, it will unleash growth, and it will help end poverty. I'd like to get a sense of who's in this room. We are here really to talk about the serious gaps that do exist, and we recognize they're there. To talk about the challenges and the opportunities and the role that the different stakeholders have to play in order to close the gaps. So if you would allow me, anyone in the room representing private sector, please put your hands up. Let's see where you are and who you are. Oh, and it's a good number. That's excellent. Thank you for being with us. Anyone in the room representing the development world, development organizations, please put your hands up. Again, well represented. Thank you. Can we see who is here from the public sector, governments? Let's see where your hands are. Yes. As we say in Kenya, asante sana, Mr. President, and all others from government and public sector. It's wonderful to see you here. Now that we are on Ghanaian soil, allow me to quote the words of a son of Ghana, who is an inspiration to so many Africans even today. And he said, "Action without thought is empty. Thought without action is blind." Those are the words many, many years ago of Kwame Nkrumah. And so we are here today to ensure that we have thought in our action and that we carry out, implement the things that we promise to do and the opportunities that we clearly see that exist. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome to give opening remarks the World Bank Managing Director and Chief Financial Officer, Joaquim Levy. Please, let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
Excellency, President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Addo, Dankwa, Akuffo Addo. Nime, Name, Nanamon, Honorable Ministers of Ghana, Côte d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, members of Parliament and the diplomatic corps, representatives of the public sector and particularly the private sector, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Okay. On behalf of the World Bank, it's my pleasure to welcome you all at this third annual Development Finance Forum, the DFF, in this beautiful and dynamic city of Accra. It is a particular pleasure for me. As some of you know, I'm Brazilian, so I think that I feel very much at home in this place. So let me start by saying Medasa Pa. Thank you to the Ghanaian government and counterparts for their warm welcome and hospitality. This year's EFF is particularly special because it's the first one in Africa. And we are delighted to see such an overwhelming interest from the continent, from people from here in the event. It is notable that half of the participants represent the private sector, while the other half come from the public sector, think tanks, and NGO. We just saw that. This kind of diversity provides a great setting for success in the DFF. For those of you who are new to the DFF format, Let me tell you, it is one that includes no presentations, only very few panels. Instead, we all, each one of you and us, roll up our sleeves and work together in design sessions, special group dynamics, to uncover issues and innovate solutions to complex challenges that hinder private investment. Since 2015, this forum has played a critical role in shaping the development finance dialogue. Let me recall that, for instance, in Rotterdam, back in 2015, collectively, we laid the ground for the Multilateral Development Bank's commitments in the Addis Ababa Action Agenda that enshrined a very important role of the private sector in development finance, a real change in approach, and I would say almost in paradigm. In Dublin last year, your comments and feedback helped us refine the design of what you call a private sector window in the groundbreak IDA 18 replenishment process. And I believe in the next 2 days, you hear about this private sector window and how it can increase the development impact of private finance and economic growth in Africa. You're going to see how it works, what it can achieve. The purpose of this year DFF is to come up with creative and concrete ideas to unlock and spur private investment in the African markets. This will not happen, however, without alignment of public and private interests. Let me tell you that yesterday I was in Abidjan, where we participated in discussions with public and private sector representatives. We have His Excellency, the Minister of the Planning and Government Portfolio here, and he participated in these discussions yesterday, and they were very productive. And there, again, we brought together the public sector, development institutions, and the private sector. And we heard very important and useful things. Through my interactions, I saw once again there is so much potential in Africa. Yet this potential, we know, has not fully been realized yet because of some challenges that countries face in attracting investment, which is critical to achieve our sustainable development goals and also the World Bank twin goals of eliminating extreme poverty and sharing prosperity. Well, of course, this is very unfortunate, particularly in this time when you do see so much money, so many savings around in the world earning so little returns, such a low yield, when we know that probably if they could get here and find the adequate returns, they would have not only a tremendous impact in the countries where the money is deployed, but also create meaningful income streams with higher yields, not exaggerated, but higher yields than most savers get today. We know that a very large fraction gets negative returns. So we really have to work very hard to take advantage of this unique opportunity. I think that, like I said, the impact here would be very important, especially if you channel part of these resources to climate-friendly, climate-smart infrastructure. And we take advantage of the young demography that is a hallmark of Africa. But for this, of course, we have to work to boost the confidence of investors, not only the foreign investors, but especially the domestic investors, the domestic savers that want to mobilize their resources and put into productive use. So at the World Bank, we've been working to achieve that through a new approach. It's the so-called cascade approach. And what is that? I'll take just 1 minute to explain, because it's something that probably is the first time some of you are hearing. In the most simplest terms, this approach prescribes that we first consider private investment when we think about projects, and in particular infrastructure projects. Then, if you realize that just on a pure commercial base, a project will not be affordable, we will look at public-private partnerships where the government also brings some support. And only if not even this is available, there are sectors or there are situations where the public investment, pure public investment, cannot be replaced. But we always make this thinking so that we are sure that we're using the scarce public resources in the most efficient way. Of course, this is not a panacea. Like I said, if you just think about the size of the requirements for infrastructure, sometimes 10% of GDP, we're not going to finance everything just with foreign investment, because otherwise the burden of the debt will be too big. We have to do some things also through the budget, and some things with the domestic capital market also to create revenues for domestic investors, but we get a balance. For that, of course, we need something that Ghana is doing very well, which is to stimulate friendly business environment with adequate reforms. And we have also to develop innovative financial instruments that will facilitate this crowding in of private investment. With these, I'm sure that you'll be able to use in the best possible way the scarce resources, including the $2.5 billion envelope of this private sector window that I mentioned. That window, we are going to see all the details, are really meant to help the private sector, usually without requiring a counterpart guarantee or support from the public sector, so that it doesn't create a new onus to the public sector, but instead is on on our own balance sheet to support either concessional terms or de-risk in more general terms. So we know that implementing this vision is not necessarily to be very easy, but we'll face the challenges, because this is what makes it interesting. And knowing that there are good examples ahead of us, such as these from Ghana, is very encouraging. And this is why it was critical, we thought, to hold the first African DFF in Accra. And we are very confident that we're going to really explore, discover, develop innovative approaches to guarantee this new era of increasing investment in infrastructure. Just before finishing, I have to say something that the President shared with me, and I think it's not a secret that I should not share. Of course, one of the big aspirations of people, especially in Ghana, but I'm sure everywhere in Africa, and of course in most countries, are jobs. And you know that with the support of the public sector, with the right regulations, the right environment, the private sector is ready, willing, and really the best way to create these jobs for all the youth that really are the future of Africa, and I'm sure will bring so much good things for the countries in the whole region and the whole continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Let's give him another warm round of applause, please. And I think, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you all to put your hands together as we welcome the President of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Akuffo Addo, to share his thoughts.
Ministers of Côte d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and Ghana, Managing Director, Vice Presidents, and staff of the World Bank Group, private sector participants, members of the diplomatic corps, fellow Ghanaians, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to Ghana and to the third 2017 Development Finance Forum. As we say in Ghana, Akwaba. You are amongst the people who pride themselves on their sense of hospitality. And I hope that by the end of your visit, you will agree with this description. Pour notre frère de Côte d'Ivoire, je vous souhaite le bienvenue à notre beau pays. With the first two meetings of the Development Finance Forum having been held in Europe, Rotterdam in 2015 and Dublin in 2016, I believe that the choice of Ghana to be the first to host this forum outside Europe has something to do with the special place it holds as a beacon of stable democratic governance in Africa, as well as the proverbial warm hospitality of the Ghanaian people. Indeed, this forum about unlocking private investment in African markets cannot find a better venue than in our vibrant capital city of Accra. It is also very significant that this forum is being held in Africa, where the challenge of raising finance for development to address critical investment needs in infrastructure, education, health, industry, and agriculture, amongst others, is probably the greatest relative to incomes. In a 2010 report, the World Bank estimated that, and I quote, the overall cost to build new infrastructure, refurbish dilapidated assets, and operate and maintain all existing and new installations in sub-Saharan Africa is estimated at almost $93 billion a year for 26 through 2015, unquote, with roughly 40% of this required in the power sector alone. Ghana's infrastructure finance gap is estimated to run between 3.9 and 5.5 billion US dollars per year through 2026. In other words, more than 40 billion United States dollars in total. What is true is that we cannot meet this demand without financing at a much larger scale through significant additional private investment. That is true for Ghana and true for the entire West African region and beyond. We understand the role that international development finance institutions play in helping to de-risk and attract private capital into infrastructure development in Africa. While this conference deliberates on these issues, I'd like also to address the issue of how African countries can by themselves take action to de-risk their economies and attract low-cost private capital. My government, which has been in office barely 5 months, inherited a very difficult economic situation. I should, add, that one would not have thought so, going by the reports of the IMF, which were largely at variance with the experience of the Ghanaian people. As a result of the situation we inherited, we have set for ourselves a long-term agenda for a Ghana beyond aid, requiring far-reaching reforms in economic governance, involving fiscal responsibility and discipline, political governance, addressing corruption and unresponsive bureaucracies, focus on productive sectors, addressing primarily agriculture and industry, and improving the business environment, addressing bottlenecks and formalizing the economy. Ghana is a land of opportunity for private capital. More importantly, Ghana is open for business and has taken upon herself to build a business-friendly economy that will enable her to get to the stage where the opportunities available here will help her build an optimistic, self-confident, and prosperous nation beyond aid. Fundamental to attracting private sector investment is maintaining a stable macroeconomic environment in the context of a growing economy. This is why, since assuming office, my government has established a macroeconomic framework with policies that seek to restore fiscal discipline and macroeconomic stability. We have put in place measures to reduce the fiscal deficit bequeathed to us from 9% in 2016 to 6.5% this year. Government has created fiscal space by capping earmarked funds to 25% of government revenues and realigning expenditures to government priorities. This is a policy that successive governments have tried over several years to implement, but were unable to do. To boost growth, we have reorientated fiscal policy from a focus on taxation to a focus on production. In this regard, we have undertaken the following tax reforms: abolish the 1% special import levy, abolish the 17.5% VAT on domestic airline tickets, abolish the 17.5% on financial services, abolish the 17.5% VAT on selected imported medicines that are not produced locally, abolish the 5% VAT on real estate sales, replace the 17.5% VAT rate with a flat rate of 3% for traders, granted capital gains tax exemption on stocks traded on the Ghana Stock Exchange or publicly held securities approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Furthermore, effective September the 1st this year, clearance of goods from Ghana's ports will be 100% paperless. And secondly, all internal customs barriers in the country will also be removed to facilitate the movement of goods. As part of the process of formalizing the economy, we will implement a digital property addressing system for Ghana this year and also issue biometric national identification cards to residents this year so that every resident will have a unique identification number. My government has also moved quickly to address the energy supply constraints by tackling the financial challenges of the sector, as well as defining a policy framework that would encourage private sector investment. We will very soon issue a $2.5 billion United States energy sector bond to retire the legacy debt in the sector, of the energy sector, and create space for increased investment in the sector. We have encouraged majority Ghanaian private sector participation in the Electricity Company of Ghana, the main distributor of power in Ghana, under the Millennium Challenge Compact with the United States government. The government has reviewed existing power purchase agreements. Our policy is to move Ghana from a reliance on thermal towards renewable energy. We've thus decided the new power purchase agreements will only be signed for renewable energy. We have furthermore ushered in a new regime of accountability. All ministers have declared their assets, and the Special Prosecutor's Office is being set up to prosecute corruption in a depoliticized manner. In addition, we have established a value for money unit within the Public Procurement Authority. This unit will review all contracts to ensure that value for money information is provided on time. Our focus in the real economy is to promote investment both in the industrial and agricultural sectors. In agriculture, we have instituted a program that we have dubbed Planting for Food and Jobs. It provides farmers access to affordable inputs, extension services, and improved irrigation infrastructure. We're embarking on a private sector-led industrialization program through a One District, One Factory initiative and a $100 million stimulus package for the revival of distressed industries. My government has also decided, as a matter of policy, to seek more private sector equity financing for infrastructure projects, rather than the historic resort to borrowing and more borrowing that has resulted in the ballooning of our debt stock. It is a policy underpinned by our commitment to the private sector and by our desire to maintain debt sustainability. We're implementing a policy of reprofiling our existing debts to extend the maturities, reduce the interest burden, and create space for the private sector. About 6 weeks ago, Ghana issued, for the first time, a 15-year local currency bond, raising in that cycle more than $2 billion United States dollars. That is evidence of the returning private sector investor confidence in Ghana. Because investors make decisions on the basis of their perception of risk and uncertainty, this transaction sends a clear message to the markets that this new government, my government, has started on a sound footing and that Ghana is on a path of fiscal consolidation, debt sustainability, and growth. Our actions are only a part of the equation. We need risk reallocation instruments from the multilateral development banks, like guarantees and insurance, to be deployed to trigger additional investments. For example, a $700 million United States dollar World Bank Group guarantee enabled us mobilize $7.9 billion United States dollars of private investment. These are the kind of deals that should happen more often in Africa as development finance institutions partner with private capital. It brings into sharp focus the subject matter of this conference, leveraging development financing and partnerships to attract private capital to finance infrastructure development in many developing and distressed countries, in line with the new thinking referred to as, quote, from billions to trillions, transforming development finance, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to see that this event has a regional dimension. Run-up events took place in Freetown and Abidjan earlier this week. I commend the World Bank Group for designing this novel format to convene experience and knowledge from across West Africa and beyond. It underscores the importance of regional cooperation in the agenda of transformation. The failure of one country will negatively affect the success of all. This is why my government applauds the members of the International Development Association, IDA, for a strong replenishment that scales up support to countries in fragility and invests in private sector through their bold move to establish a $2.5 billion United States dollar private sector window. Through the window, public finance will be used to catalyze private investments in low-income countries, and in particular, in economies that are under stress of conflict and fragility. Several of these countries are unfortunately in this region of West Africa. As the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Ghana a decade ago, I was involved in efforts to bring stability to the countries of the Mano River Union. The peace agreements and peacekeeping interventions in Sierra Leone and Liberia between 1993 and 2003 have led to stability in the region. We have seen how these interventions paved the way for some pioneer investments. I've talked about what the public and private sectors, development finance institutions, and multilateral development banks can do in order to catalyze additional private finance for development. Each can contribute through their instruments, whether it is through legislation such as our public procurement law, our private partner law, or the private sector window of the World Bank Group. There is one thing that the public and private sectors need to do more of, and where we are all equally responsible. To mobilize the good power of finance, we need to cooperate more, and we need to cooperate smartly. Amidst all the complexity of the 21st century, our interdependence requires such cooperation. This spirit is captured in the Dankwa symbol associated with this conference, Boame, Namemwao, representing cooperation and interdependence. The public and private sectors need each other, need to understand each other, and adapt their strategies in order to contribute to each other's success. Help me so I can help you. That is the literal meaning of the Dankwa symbol. Moreover, I should note that multilateral development banks such as the World Bank Group can facilitate these partnerships and create the platforms that generate ideas and nurture these to success, just like you would do here in Accra. Building partnerships takes time and commitment, and their rewards often only show after a long time has passed. The World Bank Group, African Development Bank, and other multilateral financing institutions can help lower the transactional costs for the public and private sectors to enter into partnerships and alliances. As a shareholder and a client of the World Bank Group, I ask you to continue to invest and improve in that role. We are at a juncture in the history of our continent where a new generation of leaders is emerging. Leaders who are committed to governing their peoples according to the rule of law, respect for individual liberties and human rights, and the principles of democratic accountability. Leaders who are looking past commodities to position their countries in the global marketplace. Leaders who are determined to free their peoples from a mindset of dependence, aid, charity, and handouts. Leaders who are bent on mobilizing Africa's own immeasurable resources to resolve Africa's problems. And leaders who recognize the connectedness of their peoples and economies to those of their neighbors. We must embrace this forward march, this welcome development, with all our strength and with the best of intentions. I truly hope that this forum will produce powerful new ideas, partnerships, and alliances for Africa. I wish you all good luck, and it gives me great pleasure to declare the third 2017 Development Finance Forum of the World Bank Group officially open.
Truly an incredible speech, ladies and gentlemen. The President has made a slew of commitments, measures he's taking to transform Ghana. He says Ghana is a land of opportunity for private capital. Ghana is open for business. And this we must see reflected across the rest of Africa, because as he also says, the failure of one country will affect the others. And we've seen this from west to east, from north to south. He says we need to cooperate more, and we need to cooperate smartly. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we're in this room today. Our interdependence, he says, requires such cooperation. We are leaders, he says, who are determined to free our people from a mindset of dependence. Can we give that a round of applause? And he ended with, we must embrace the forward march. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, the President will be exiting, and we can all be upstanding and give him a thorough round of applause for his commitment and his words. If you'll allow me, would you allow me to be African as the President exits? And to ululate? I get approval from someone at the front, and so in Africa we say, Adoo!